coming up to the end of the things that I wanted to talk about, we have a very interesting thing. So, bringing it back to the two Wii U games that I was talking about, it would be a compromising in design, right? So, Donkey Kong Country is a game where it's known to be difficult. Specifically, Donkey Kong Country Returns Wii, from what I understand. I've never personally played it, but it is a very difficult game for a lot of people. And to some, Donkey Kong Country Returns Tropical Freeze is pretty difficult as well. To the point where they have included in the Nintendo Switch version a new Funky Kong mode, which is effectively an easy mode for younger audiences. And I was playing Donkey Kong Country Returns, right? Tropical Freeze, and I'm got to the I don't know how close I am to the end in actuality, but I got to like World 5 and I noticed that I have at least 70 plus lives. And I can't help but think, who truly is this Funky Kong mode for? But more specifically, like the white Tanuki power up in something like Super Mario Bros. World. I say this because I feel like the developers are greatly underestimating children in their design when they do stuff like that and make design more patronizing more so than rewarding for actually learning, how to play the game well. And I get it that, kids want to probably finish the game that they bought and things of that nature. But, when I was a kid, finishing a game isn't exactly guaranteed. Like, there's nothing about buying a game that would say that you can make it to the end of said game. And I know that might sound very odd because, like, if you bought a game, shouldn't you be entitled to see the end of it? Not necessarily. But you are entitled to have a good time with it. And you don't necessarily have to reach the end of the game or even be good at the game to have a good time with it. And how do you say? My example of this goes back a long ways, from Dragon Ball Budokai. No. Okay, I'm skipping ahead. So, because of the patronizing design, I think that it allows kids to miss out on something that's really important, which is losing in a very low stakes environment. And why that's important is because, well, you have to learn how to lose and overcome, that loss, that feeling of, that sucky feeling. I have no idea, no other way to describe it. That, like, you want to be angry at your loss, and you can be angry at your loss, but it deprives kids of a way to push past that. And in some cases, it will encourage that they look for an easier way out, I believe, whenever they, want to do something, actually big with their lives, like whatever they choose to do, whatever they choose to take interest in. If they're not willing to lose in a low stakes environment, it will negatively affect them when they eventually get to a high stakes environment, like feeding themselves. If they don't understand that with every great success, it comes however many losses. I don't know how big that number is, but I know it exists. And it exists for everyone out there who is starting something new. So with that being said, I want to use myself as an example for this. So back when I was a kid, there was Naruto Clash of Ninja. And this was like one of the first GameCube games. No, actually, Clash of Ninja 2 was the first GameCube game I had ever played in my entire life, right? So I wasn't, used to losing a lot in video games. And Clash of Ninja 2, man, I struggled as a kid. I struggled a lot. And, there were days where at some point, after losing a lot, I felt like crying. And I remember this so vividly in my head. My mom would say, she'd hear me crying, and she'd say, if the game is upsetting you that much, I will come in there and turn off the GameCube. She didn't say GameCube, but she said game. All right. And, as a kid, that like sent a message to me, where if I wanted to keep playing Naruto, which I did, I had to control myself. I had to learn to take these losses and not be so frustrated by them. And granted, I was a very young kid. I don't quite remember how old I was when Clash of Ninja 2 came out, but I wasn't even like 6 years old at the time, so I was like young. But nevertheless, losing a lot in that game helped me understand that if I wanted to do something and if I wanted to get better, then I'd have to control myself. I have to understand that I'd have to understand that, whining and crying about it is not going to help get me to where I want to go. I have to, I just have to play better. And if I take a loss, learn how to take the loss. Obviously, I didn't realize all that when I was however years old, like a baby at the time. But nevertheless, it was something that I had to still control. I had to learn how to control my emotions. And then eventually, when I got into fighting games again, I lost a lot. And when I say a lot, I mean a lot. Like, I lost so many times, I've lost count. But nevertheless, in losing, I was able to find a way. How do you say? I was able to learn a lot more in losing, and in a sense, losing exposed a lot more about myself. The parts that needed to be worked on that I was just completely oblivious to. And I don't know. I just think that, if you compromise the design with something like the white Tanuki suit, more so than Funky Kong mode, then you lose out a lot when you bring games to these kids, because believe it or not, you can grow as a person when you're just playing a game. And I think that's like the biggest takeaway I have gotten from games over the course of my life, is that games can, not only just be a source of entertainment, games can be a gigantic way for me and many other people to grow as people, to understand, some of the more complex things in life without entering into a very high stakes scenario that people have to fall down flat on their face for, because how do you say, let's just bring the example to a professional basketball player. And let's say that, they had, or not even a professional basketball player. Let's just put it to a basketball player, and let's just put them in an example where they want to go pro, but they can't because, straight up, they're not good enough. In that example, if the player has never ever entered into a situation where they have lost before, they're not going to take that well. They're going to be extremely frustrated. They're not going to think about ways that they could improve. They're not going to try and figure out or ask around the other potential players, maybe even other coaches, for what could I do better or things of that nature. They're going to crumble at that moment because they've never actually faced a situation where they had to lose and then get back up from. And that's really the heart of this whole topic that I'm trying to get to, is that kids should be put in situations where they lose and get back up, and they get back up. Like, that's it. That's the end of the statement. And I get it. Video games can be frustrating at times, and hard games are hard games. But whatchamacallit? It is what it is. Not everything is meant to be easy. And in fact, if you make something easy, you deprive that person of something greater. This is an idea that came across my mind when I was thinking of this point. But for the Souls games, I don't play them. So forgive me for how I refer to them. But I'm aware that they have something called a bonfire there, right? And so the bonfire is supposed to be like a safe haven, like your resting spot, like, an actual bonfire, for whatever it is that you just went through, because those games are super difficult. If you make that game easy or put an easy mode in it, you remove the kind of relief that the player will potentially feel when they get to the bonfire, because from what I've seen, the bonfire is supposed to give the player like a whoo, finally I can like stop playing, go to the bathroom or something like that, type of feeling, right? But if you could cakewalk the whole game, who cares? The bonfire has lost any kind of significance in terms of mechanic wise, and it doesn't. I imagine the player now feels like a very big loss of progress too, because if you could cakewalk the whole game, the struggles that you went through, the struggles that you haven't went through don't mean anything to you, because you didn't have to grow or learn from them. They just passed you by in the blink of an eye. Let's see. Oh, right. And another thing is that, unfortunately, in a compromised design type of, you know, let, well, I'll just, all right, well, okay, I probably should finish up, but anyways, in this whole compromised design thing is that, you basically limit the amount of games that you can make and amount of games that are to be made. And so you lose very interesting games that could be made for experts, and you just make games for those who could uh, basically lack the mechanical prowess to beat them. That's not what I wanted to say, but that's what came out. I'll do my best to elaborate on that point later, but I really, the children were on my mind when, I was playing Donkey Kong, because, yeah, and I get it. I've been playing games for a lot longer than they have, but, so my perspective is completely different from theirs. But when it comes to, making things like too easy for kids, I'm very much so not about that, because there is a lot to be learned in, in facing difficulty. And once again, if you remove that low stakes environment where a kid can lose and, be forced to learn, then what do you leave them with? Not much, actually. So yeah, appreciate your time, and I'll see you all next time.